He was granted the option to bring his family to live on base. Just like in my past life, he chose to bring along the widowed Rachel Shen. With guilt written all over his face, he held my hand tightly and said earnestly, "Sophie, I promised my brother I'd take good care of his wife. I can't break that promise. Rachel isn't like you. She's delicate and frail, she can't handle hardship. But you're different. At most, I'm asking you to stay in the countryside and wait for me for 3 years. I swear I'll come back for you after that." In my past life, I believed his promise. I waited 3 years and then another 3, always in the countryside, until I was backed into a corner, broke and desperate. I went to the base to find Liam, only to discover that he and Rachel had long been living together openly, as a loving couple. Everyone in the military family housing already knew. I was furious and confronted Liam, demanding an explanation. But instead, he and Rachel joined forces and killed me. So in this life, the moment I heard him repeat those same words, I chose to refuse. I told him I wanted a clean break, but Liam wouldn't accept it. He used our military marriage as a chain, trying to force me to keep being their servant. I couldn't win against Liam, but I refused to end up like the last life, working myself to death like a mule for him and Rachel. Then fate gave me a chance. I found a bottle of so-called miracle oil in Rachel's bag. Quietly, I replaced it with glue. At 3 a.m., both Liam and Rachel were rushed to the emergency room. It was pouring outside. I ran back home through the heavy rain, soaked to the bone, not a single part of my waistband dry. As I pushed open the door, I heard Diane Yu, my mother-in-law, laughing from inside the house. "This shirt is so pretty. Pink suits Rachel. Let her have it. And these leather shoes too. Give them to her." Through the downpour, I locked eyes with Rachel, who sat in the main room wearing a smug, satisfied smile. She quickly looked away and said sweetly, "Mom, don't give me everything. Maybe let Sophie have a little too." "For what?" Diane scoffed. "That Sophie works in the fields every day. She'll just ruin nice clothes like these." Before she even finished speaking, she shoved all the clothes and shoes Liam had brought back into Rachel's arms. "Rachel, Liam only has half a month's leave. Go start packing the things you're taking with you. Makes it easier to move." Rachel beamed as she hugged her pile of new belongings and glanced at me standing soaking wet in the doorway. "Mom, wasn't that family relocation spot supposed to be for Sophie? Will she even agree if I go instead?" "She doesn't have a choice," Diane replied coldly. "Liam already made the decision. Besides, if Sophie leaves, who's going to take care of me? There's so much work around here. Someone has to do it. You're too weak to carry anything. You're the perfect person to go with him to the base." I don't know if it was the cold or the chill in my heart, but I shivered where I stood. I had worked like a beast taking care of Diane, who was constantly ill, sacrificing my own well-being without a word of complaint. But Diane never once showed gratitude. She treated my devotion as if it were a sin. Because I was capable, because I obeyed, I was supposed to be left behind in the countryside and used up. Meanwhile, Rachel, who lied, faked illness, and lazed around, was the one who deserved an easy life. I felt utterly frozen inside. Forcing a stiff smile, I walked across the courtyard and climbed the steps. At that moment, Rachel came out of the house, arms full of bags. Our eyes met at the top of the stairs. A dark flicker passed through her eyes as she suddenly charged toward me. She thought I'd move aside. I didn't. I stood my ground and pushed back with all my strength. A sharp scream rang out. Rachel, still clinging to her bags, tumbled down the steps, landing in the rain-soaked yard. Her arms flew open, and the clothes, shoes, and little gifts scattered everywhere. She lay there, groaning in real pain this time. It wasn't an act. She had truly fallen hard. Inside the house, Diane and Liam heard her scream and rushed outside. Their concern for Rachel was heartfelt and immediate. They didn't even glance at me, standing drenched beneath the eaves. Both of them ran straight to Rachel and helped her up. Cradled in Liam's arms, Rachel whimpered, "It hurts. It hurts so much. My foot, Sophie, why did you push me?" As Rachel pointed her finger at me, only then did Liam and Diane finally notice that I was standing under the awning, soaked from head to toe. Liam Xander frowned and looked at me. "Sophie, why did you push Rachel? Don't you know she's not in good health? Those steps are steep and it's pouring rain. What if something serious happened to her? Could you take responsibility for that?" Diane Yu also began shouting at me. Sophie White, you're completely out of line. I'm telling you now, if anything happens to Rachel because of you, don't blame me for getting nasty. Hearing both Liam and Diane side with her, a glint of satisfaction flashed in Rachel's eyes. Clinging sweetly to Liam's neck, she said in her soft, delicate voice, "Don't blame Sophie. She was probably just upset about the gifts. It's understandable. I'll split them in half and give some to her." "And you call yourself grown?" Diane snapped at me. "So petty over a few gifts that you'd do something this cruel to Rachel? How did our Xander family end up with such a cold-hearted daughter-in-law?" She didn't hold back as she tore into me, and before she was done, she turned to Liam and added, "Rachel's soaked and she's hurt. Take her to her room right now and help her change." Liam immediately picked up Rachel and strode up the stairs, giving me an order as he passed. "Sophie White, go make a bowl of ginger tea. Rachel's body is weak. She can't catch a chill." Diane quickly gathered up all the scattered things in the yard and followed him up the stairs. As she passed me, she shot me a vicious warning. "I'm telling you, if something happens to Rachel, you'll see what I'll do to you." The two of them, mother and son, entered Rachel's room one after the other, fussing over her like she was made of glass. Not once did either of them spare even a glance at me, soaking wet and standing outside like I was invisible. I walked to the kitchen, leaving wet footprints behind me with every step. I lit the firewood and threw in 2 big chunks of brown sugar. Then I cracked 8 eggs into the pot. A big bowl of steaming brown sugar egg soup later, my body finally began to warm up. After finishing it, I set down the bowl and chopsticks, turned around, and went back to my room. I started undressing, peeling off my soaked clothes to change into something dry. Just then, Diane's voice boomed from outside. "Sophie White, is that ginger tea ready or not? Hurry up and bring it." I ignored her and continued changing. A few minutes later, unable to find me in the kitchen, Diane stormed into my room, kicking the door open. "Sophie White, where the hell did you go? Why haven't you made the ginger tea? Don't you know Rachel's waiting for it?" I looked at her coldly and asked each word slowly, deliberately. Why should I? Until that moment, I had never once talked back to Diane. Whatever she said, I did. So for me to suddenly question her stunned her into silence. Then came the fury. "Why? Because you're married into the Xander family, that's why. I'm your mother-in-law. If I tell you to do something, you do it. Now go make the tea, and while you're at it, wash Rachel's wet clothes too." I looked at the woman I had served for 15 years. Her shirt, by the way, was one I had cleaned and ironed, and all I felt was disgust. "No." "What did you say? You want to rebel now?" Diane was now livid, absolutely humiliated by my refusal. She lunged at me, ready to hit me, but I saw her clumsy movements coming and quickly sidestepped. She missed, fell hard to the floor with a loud thud, and smacked her chin against the edge of the bed frame. Blood poured from her mouth. Diane screamed in pain, wailing loudly. I just stood there, watching her with a cold expression, unmoved. Hearing her scream, Liam rushed in. The moment he saw Diane lying on the floor, her mouth covered in blood, he was shocked. "Mom, what happened?" "She hit me. That little wretch, Sophie." I told her to make some ginger tea and she refused. I asked her to wash Rachel's clothes and she wouldn't do that either. I said a few words and she attacked me. Diane was shameless, lying through her teeth as effortlessly as breathing. Liam turned to me, glaring with rage. "Sophie White, why did you hit my mom? Are you out of your mind?" I stared back at him coldly. "I didn't hit your mom. She tried to hit me, slipped, and fell. That's how she ended up like this. No, she hit me." "Liam, teach this shameless little tramp a lesson. She needs to be put in her place." Diane shrieked, her voice sharp and high-pitched, demanding that Liam avenge her. I knew I didn't stand a chance in a physical fight against Liam. To protect myself, I stepped back a few paces and reached for the backup wooden pole leaning in the corner of the room. My fingers wrapped tightly around it. When Liam Xander saw me reach for the wooden pole, his pupils widened. He clearly hadn't expected me to make a move like that. Diane Yu was still egging him on to hit me, but Liam didn't listen to her. Instead, he reached down and helped Diane off the floor. After casting me a complicated look, he turned and walked out. Outside, Diane's wailing echoed louder, then softer, rising and falling with her sobs. I stayed in the room, packing my things with a calm, detached heart. After 3 years of marriage to Liam, I barely had anything in this house to call my own. My clothes were all second-hand rags, not one pair of decent shoes. Every resource in this household had been funneled to Rachel, Shen, and Diane. I'd toiled like an old draft ox, working the fields by day and taking care of the house by night, without a single complaint. In my past life, I endured all of it like a fool and even felt proud of myself. I'd been brainwashed by Liam into believing that, as a military wife, it was my duty to support his service from behind the scenes. It wasn't until I died that I learned the truth. Liam and Rachel's scandal was no accident. Only then did I realize I was never even legally married to Liam. I had never been any kind of military wife at all. Our so-called wedding was just a few tables of food. We never registered our marriage. I wasn't his legal wife, just a convenient placeholder. That's why, after he brought Rachel with him, he could officially marry her without a second thought. He wanted it all, for me to stay behind, slaving away in the countryside, taking care of his sick mother, while making excuse after excuse for over a decade to keep me from ever joining him at the base. He never sent a penny. It was only when Diane fell ill and I went to the military base for help that I finally uncovered his lies. I was stunned to learn that everyone there believed Liam and Rachel were a legitimate, officially registered couple. I broke. I couldn't accept it. I screamed that I would report him to the higher-ups in the military, that I would demand an explanation. Afraid of the scandal, Liam tried to restrain me. Rachel shoved me hard, and I fell, smashing my head against the sharp corner of a cabinet. Blood streamed down my face. Then she picked up a dumbbell and brought it down on my head. That was how I died. Humiliated, helpless, and full of rage. I never imagined heaven would grant me another chance. This time, I wouldn't be the fool Liam could manipulate. If he wanted to bring Rachel to the base, fine. I wouldn't interfere. I wasn't gonna stop him. It wasn't that I didn't want revenge for my past life, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. Liam had already been promoted, he had power. I was just a woman with no background, no leverage. There was no way for me to fight back. So fine, let's go our separate ways and live our own lives in peace. I finished packing just as Liam pushed open the door. He looked at me with a complex expression. Sophie, let's talk? About what? I asked coldly. Sophie, are you mad at me? His tone softened. Is it because I didn't bring you any gifts this time? I actually did buy something for you. The pink shirt and those leather shoes. I bought them for you. It's just, Mom found them first and gave them to Rachel. Liam took the initiative to explain why I didn't get any gifts. His voice even sounded a little aggrieved. Rachel has had it rough. If she liked them, then fine, she can have them. I'll buy you something next time. That certainly didn't happen in my past life. I was married to Liam for 5 years. He came home 3 times and every time he brought gifts, but not once were they for me. Diane and Rachel always divided everything up beforehand. Not once did Liam offer a single explanation. But now, the moment I started resisting, he realized something was off. And yet, he still didn't truly see me as a person. How laughable. I'd been his wife for 5 years, worked myself to the bone, and Liam still believed I should naturally step aside, always give way. Even after explaining, he couldn't resist scolding me. Sophie, how can you be so petty? You used to be so mature, so understanding. Why are you upset over a few gifts? I'll talk to Mom for you, smooth things over, but things with Rachel are harder. You were wrong to push her and hurt her foot. You should go apologize to her. He actually wanted me to apologize to Rachel Shen. I'd always known what kind of man he was, and yet, it still hurt a little. I stared straight at Liam. I didn't push Rachel, and I'm not going to apologize no matter what you say. So don't waste your time. My refusal stunned Liam Xander. He looked at me with surprise in his eyes. Sophie, what happened to you? You've changed into someone I don't even recognize. In my past life, I was proud of Liam. I put him on a pedestal, treated him like the center of my world. I followed his lead in everything and never questioned a single decision he made. So it made sense that he couldn't handle this version of me. He frowned, his voice serious. Sophie, you're a military wife. You should know that being a soldier's wife requires a different mindset than ordinary people. Even if this situation wasn't entirely your fault, I hope you can take a step back and apologize to Rachel on your own. Liam, I said clearly, let me make it absolutely clear. I will never apologize to Rachel Shen. Seeing how firm I was, Liam's face darkened completely. He looked at me and spoke each word with weight. If you want to stand by me, if you want to be a good military wife and support this household, then you need to apologize. Be reasonable. I cut him off mid-sentence. I'm done trying to be your loyal shadow. If you want someone to support your career, go find someone else. If you want the honor of a military wife, then give it to someone who cares. I'm out. I picked up my small bundle of belongings and headed for the door. Liam choked slightly, then stepped in front of me to block my way. What do you mean? Say it clearly. I mean I can't live like this anymore, I said coldly. I'm leaving. That's impossible. Liam gripped my hand tightly. You love me so much, Sophie, how could you bear to leave me? He really believed I loved him for his looks, that I'd forever be willing to sacrifice for him, never asking for anything in return. How ridiculous. I yanked my hand free. Back then I was blind, completely out of my mind, but not anymore. We never even registered our marriage, so we're not legally husband and wife. I slaved away for your family for 5 years, like a fool. That's on me. But starting today, I'm done being your workhorse. I'm going to find my own happiness. Liam hadn't expected me to say that. He stood frozen for a second, then asked, Is this about not being legally married? If you want the certificate, that's easy. Tomorrow, I'll go to the village office, get the paperwork, and we'll make it official. This has nothing to do with a marriage certificate, I said flatly. I just don't want to be with you anymore. I'm tired of this life, tired of sacrificing everything for your family. I pointed to the patched clothes I was wearing. I've been married to you for 5 years, and I've never worn a new outfit, never had a full night's sleep, never even tasted a proper home-cooked meal. I've had enough. Liam's eyes dropped to my worn, threadbare clothes. A flicker of guilt passed through his gaze. I admit I've neglected you. Before I got promoted, my salary was low. I didn't have much to give. Yet somehow, Rachel always got everything. I had no choice, he said. But now things are different. I've been promoted, my salary has doubled. I'll give you half of it. You won't have to work so hard anymore. He probably thought offering me half his paycheck would be enough to shut me up, that it would satisfy me and keep me from pushing back. He even started bringing up the topic of following him to the base again. Sophie, this time when I came back, the military gave me a spot for a family member to accompany me. According to regulations, that spot was supposed to go to you. But Rachel can't take care of herself. She's not well, so Mom and I decided she'd go with me instead. A few years from now, after I've been promoted again and Rachel finds a steady job, I'll bring you over too. That's your business, I said. You don't need to discuss it with me. I'm leaving. I want nothing to do with your family's plans. Seeing that I was completely unmoved, Liam's temper visibly flared. He grabbed my hand again. Sophie White, what do you want from me? I've already explained it to you, Liam Xander said. It's not that I don't want to bring you with me. I owe my brother and I have to repay that debt. That's why I can only take Rachel with me for now. As for you, your health is great, you're hardworking, you just need to stay home and wait a few more years. That debt to your brother is your business, I replied. I don't owe him anything. Why should I have to be the one to sacrifice? If you want to repay him, do it yourself. Don't drag me into it. Without me, the so-called family maid, what would your Xander household even run on? Liam's face flushed red with embarrassment at my sharp words. What kind of mindset is that? How could you say something so outrageous? Oh, I'm the one being outrageous? I laughed coldly. Isn't your entire family the one acting insane? Here's what I don't get. What does your brother's death have to do with you? Was it your fault he died? Since he passed, Rachel's done nothing but loaf around all day. She doesn't lift a finger. I even have to call her to the table just to get her to eat. And you say you owe your brother? Fine. You want to pamper Rachel because of that? Give her your paycheck? That's your choice, but why should I suffer for it? Why should I have to be the one working like a mule? Why am I the one dragged into your family's twisted idea of repaying a debt? Why should I be the one acting like some worn-out servant? My questions left Liam completely stuck. He couldn't say a word. Just then, Rachel's soft, sugary voice drifted in from outside. "Liam, Mom says her mouth really hurts. Come take a look." The moment he heard Diane Yu was in pain, Liam turned and started to leave. I followed behind him with my bag, but he suddenly snatched it from my hands. "How long are you going to keep making a scene? Can you just stop causing trouble for me?" "I've made myself very clear," I said calmly. "We never registered our marriage. We're not legally husband and wife. I'm done involving myself in your family's business. Let's just part ways peacefully. You go your way, and I'll go mine." That was when it finally sank in for Liam. I wasn't just throwing a fit. I truly meant to leave. He gripped my bag tighter and glared at me. "Sophie White, I dare you to try walking out that door. I'm warning you. Even if we're not legally married, everyone knows we've lived as husband and wife. That's common law marriage. If you try to leave, I'll make you pay." Liam's expression turned ruthless. "You think you can just walk away from a military marriage? If you dare leave, I'll report you for violating military marriage laws and have you locked up. You have no idea how serious that is nowadays." I stared at him, watching how desperate and furious he'd become. His threats didn't scare me, but they made it clear I couldn't leave just yet. So I stayed. But staying didn't mean surrendering. In my heart, I made a firm decision. From now on, I would no longer be their workhorse. I wouldn't do chores around the house, and I definitely wouldn't touch the fields. Rachel wasn't the only one who knew how to slack off. I could too. The next morning, I broke my usual habit and slept in until the sun was high in the sky. Rachel and Diane were absolutely livid. I refused to work, and they couldn't bear to ask Liam, who was home on leave, to do housework either. That left the two of them stuck doing everything together. They struggled to cook a full meal and set the table nicely. I strolled out of my room, sat down without a word, and started eating heartily. Back then, whenever there were eggs or meat on the table, it all had to be saved for Diane and Rachel. I never dared to pick up a single bite for myself. But now, my bowl was stacked high, filled with meat and vegetables. Rachel stared at me bitterly, but didn't dare say a word. She waited for Diane to speak for her. Sure enough, Diane slammed her chopsticks on the table. "What the hell is this? Were you a starving ghost in your past life?" "Maybe I was," I said casually. 5 years and I never had a decent meal. How would you know?" Then I went right back to piling food into my bowl, barely leaving anything behind. Diane didn't dare argue anymore. Instead, she quickly picked up the remaining meat and dumped it all into Liam's bowl. Liam looked at me with conflicted expression, then glanced at his mother, Diane Yu. Then I looked at Rachel Shen. I was wearing faded, patch-covered clothes that had been washed so many times they'd lost all color, while Diane Yu and Rachel were dressed in clean, brand-new outfits. My hands were calloused and cracked from years of hard labor. Their hands, in contrast, were smooth and pale, untouched by work. Liam Xander picked out the meat and vegetables that Diane had just put in his bowl and gave them to me. "Sophie, you've worked so hard. Eat more." I didn't hold back. I ate everything in one go. Diane and Rachel looked furious, their eyes practically glowing green with envy. I treated them like air, stood up, and walked off after finishing my meal. Diane yelled after me, "The laundry's not done. The weeds in the field haven't been pulled. You ate so much, go work now." I replied with a cold laugh. "I'm sore all over. I don't have the energy." She was about to launch into another rant, but Liam stepped in. "I'll do it. Let Sophie rest for a bit. Enzat she's been working too hard." Liam still thought I was just throwing a tantrum, that in 2 or 3 days I'd go back to normal. But once he realized I wasn't changing a thing, he started to panic. For 3 straight days, I didn't lift a finger. No field work, no chores. Everything in the fields fell to Liam. After spending 3 days hunched over in the dirt back to the sun, he came home only to deal with the laziness of Diane and Rachel. That's when he finally began to realize how hard my last 5 years had been. Still, he couldn't bear to let his precious Rachel suffer. He remained determined to take her with him to the base. But to prove his sincerity to me, he promised to give me 80% of his salary. To show he meant it, he handed me 200 yuan in cash and even went into town to buy me new clothes and shoes. When Rachel saw that Liam had given me money and gifts, she couldn't sit still anymore. She waited until Liam went out to work, then came to find me with a sneer in her voice. Wow, Sophie White, who knew you had it in you? Playing hard to get, huh? You really know how to retreat in order to advance. Well, I replied calmly, if I hadn't done that, that money never would have ended up in my hands. Who knows which shameless person would have snatched it instead. Seeing me speak so directly, Rachel dropped the act. It's just 200 yuan and a few pieces of clothing. Is that really something to get so greedy over? Let me tell you, for the past 5 years, Liam's given me his entire salary. All of it. It adds up to this much. She held up 2 fingers, smugly. That 200 yuan you got? That's not even a drop in the bucket. And don't forget, I'm the one going with him to the base. So that 200 yuan? Consider it a tip for the beggar. I smiled. And under what name will you be following him exactly? Last I checked, only legal family members can accompany soldiers. What exactly are you to Liam Xander? She didn't expect someone as quiet as me to strike back. Her face flushed red. Doesn't matter, I'm going. End of story. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. Oh, I'll wait, I said. And let me be clear too. If Liam dares take you to the base, I'll report it. I'll go straight to the military office and ask them what business a widowed sister-in-law has being passed off as a soldier's spouse. Rachel stomped her foot and stormed off. That evening, Liam came home from work to a cold stove and an empty kitchen. His dear mother, Diane, was sick and had gone to bed. Rachel, claiming her chest hurt, was also lying down and refusing to get up. Liam had no choice but to cook himself. It wasn't until 8 p.m. that dinner was finally served. Diane and Rachel emerged from their rooms, clutching their chests like tragic heroines. I was already sitting at the table, digging in without hesitation. Liam glanced at the 3 of us, then cleared his throat. I have something to say. I kept eating, not sparing him so much as a glance. Diane and Rachel, on the other hand, looked eagerly at him. Regardless of my reaction, Liam continued. I've decided that tomorrow Sophie and I will go register our marriage officially. The moment those words left his mouth, 3 voices rang out in unison. No. For once, Diane, Rachel and I were in rare agreement. Diane was the first to speak. You and Sophie have already been married for 5 years. What's the point of registering now? It doesn't change anything. Rachel quickly followed. Yeah, everyone already knows you two are husband and wife. That marriage certificate doesn't mean anything, I said as I quickly finished my meal, wiped my mouth and turned to Liam Xander. I never planned to register with you, and don't think for a second you can keep using me like a beast of burden. Liam stared at me with a grim expression. What will it take for you to calm down? I gave him a cold smile. All I want are the rights I deserve. Is that asking too much? Liam thought this was just a typical lover's quarrel, that a few days of silence and a couple of nights of sweet talk would fix it all. He tried to sneak into my bed, thinking intimacy would change my mind, but I never let him succeed, not even once. One night, I even kicked him off the bed. I kept a pair of scissors at my bedside. My message to Liam was simple. If he wanted to be with me, then we'd get legally married, and I would go with him as his lawful wife to the base. That was the only condition, and it wasn't up for negotiation. Liam still thought he could use a marriage certificate to tie me down. What a joke. I set down my chopsticks and got up to head back to my room, leaving him and the rest of his precious family to deal with their mess. I shut my door tight, but I could still hear the arguing outside. Diane Yu was cursing me. Rachel Shen was crying her heart out, mourning her late husband. Then I heard the sound of a chair being kicked over. When Liam finally came into my room, his face looked tired and worn out. He closed the door behind him and stared at me. Sophie, I'll take you with me. We'll go get the marriage certificate tomorrow. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Really, he said. Mom and Rachel both agreed. You've worked hard these past 5 years, and I owe you. Sophie, I'm sorry. Let's have a baby together. He stepped toward me, but before he could get close, the scissors in my hand caught his skin. He jerked back, bleeding. I stared at him and said each word clearly. We can talk about a baby after I've joined you on base. Holding his bleeding hand, Liam stormed out and slammed the door behind him. I locked it, went to bed, and slept peacefully all night. The next morning, when I got up, Liam and Diane were nowhere in sight. Only Rachel was there, her eyes puffy from crying. She glared at me like she wanted to kill me. Nice move, she hissed. Sophie White, you really are the type to bite without barking. I scoffed. If Liam couldn't satisfy you, take it up with him. Don't come to me first thing in the morning like a lunatic. What did I do to you? You know? She stammered. Of course I know. I said. The Xander house isn't exactly a mansion. There are only a few rooms. Last night, after I kicked Liam out and locked my door, he tried knocking. When I didn't open, Rachel went over, voice sugary sweet. Liam, come sleep in my room, I'm staying with Mom. Liam refused. I'll stay in Mom's room. Mom, you go sleep with Rachel tonight. Later that night, I was woken up by the sound of a woman screaming, and Liam shouting angrily, Rachel, what are you doing? Followed by Rachel sobbing pitifully. I was sleepwalking. I walked into the wrong room. Only Rachel knows if it was truly a mistake. But none of us are stupid. I just found it strange. In my past life, didn't Liam and Rachel end up living like a couple on base, openly and shamelessly? Why wasn't he doing the same thing now? I didn't believe it was conscience. He was probably just afraid I'd catch him red-handed. Liam still had some rationality left, but Rachel clearly couldn't wait anymore. She glared at me. Sophie White, Liam and I have known each other for nearly 20 years. We used to be in love. If it weren't for that accident, I would have been the one to marry him. Oh, an accident? I snorted. Don't you mean a calculated decision? You weighed your options and chose to marry Liam's brother instead. Let's not pretend. His brother had a stable job at the supply agency. He could give you a comfortable life, plenty to eat and drink. Meanwhile, Liam was just a nobody, a penniless soldier. I didn't hold back in exposing Rachel's hypocrisy. Her face turned crimson. So what if that's true? She snapped. Even though I married his brother, Liam's heart always belonged to me. All these years, he's used his brother's name as an excuse to help me. You've seen it yourself, haven't you? Let me tell you something, Sophie White. Liam never loved you. Not even a little. You were just a compromise, a servant, good for taking care of me and his mother. Oh, really? I replied. That might have been true before. But things are different now. Liam and I are about to register our marriage. Once we're married, I'll be going with him to the base, rightfully and legally, to enjoy the life of a military spouse, and you'll be stuck here in the countryside. I paused, then smiled sweetly. I hope you really enjoy that back-breaking life of yours with your face buried in the dirt and your back to the sky. You wish. Rachel Shen snapped, glaring at me viciously before storming off. I watched her retreating figure with a cold smile. Rachel was panicking, really panicking. There was no way she could just sit back and watch Liam and me register our marriage. She couldn't stand the idea of him taking me to the base. She had to fight back somehow. And there was only one path left to do that. Last night's stunt, pretending to walk into the wrong room, was her first attempt. It failed, but failure wouldn't stop her. I was sure Rachel would try something again, and soon. And with Diane Yu blindly supporting her every move, the two of them were bound to act again. All I had to do was wait patiently for the results. Later that day, Liam came back, looking apologetic. He told me that when he and Diane went to the village chief to request the recommendation letter for our marriage registration, Diane suddenly fell and had to be taken to the hospital. The letter would have to wait until tomorrow. He asked me to go with him to visit Diane at the hospital. I didn't say much, I just followed him there. Diane was lying in bed, moaning theatrically, with Rachel sitting dutifully at her side. The moment I walked in, Rachel shot me a look like I was the plague. It's all your fault, you jinx, Diane snapped. If you hadn't insisted on getting married, I wouldn't have fallen. It's all because of you. Sophie White, you're a curse. You bring misfortune wherever you go. Ever since you married into this family, everything's gone wrong. Look what happened. Rachel lost her husband. You'll never repay her for that. Then I guess I owe her a husband, I said dryly, my gaze sharp as I looked at Liam and Rachel. There was something hopeful in Rachel's eyes, like she was waiting for Liam to react. And he did. He got angry. He grabbed my hand harshly. What kind of nonsense is that? Come with me. Liam dragged me outside, away from the hospital room. He tried to explain again about the marriage registration, how he promised we'd get it done, how he swore I was the one he'd take to the base. I listened, unimpressed. His words no longer moved me, they just irritated me. Eventually, someone he knew came by and pulled him aside for a conversation. I seized the opportunity and slipped away, planning to leave the hospital on my own. As I passed Diane's room, I noticed the door had been tightly shut. In the middle of the day? Why? A strange feeling crept over me. Were Diane and Rachel plotting something in there? I stopped, moved in closer, quietly. And then I heard something that stunned me. Take this and keep it safe. It's for tonight. I paid a lot for this. The seller swore this stuff, once lit, makes men lose all control. And this bottle of miracle oil? It's supposed to enhance everything. Rachel's voice was nervous. Mom, do you think this incense and oil really work? What if Liam acts like he did last night again? I'd be humiliated. I spent good money, Diane said confidently. It'll work. Liam's just stubborn, but he likes you. He's always looked out for you, hasn't he? Listen to me. Men are afraid of women who won't give up. If he won't make a move, then you do it. I'm telling you, if you don't act now, you won't get another chance. Rachel sounded desperate. So, Liam really plans to take Sophie to the base? Just leave me behind? Of course not, Diane said with a cold laugh. That's just a stalling tactic. You saw Sophie, she's clinging to Liam like she's gone mad. And you know how much work she does for this family. If she just left, all the chores would fall on me. I can't handle that, and you sure as hell can't either. So, Diane continued, letting out a breath, we talked it over, Liam and I. We'll stabilize Sophie for now. Liam thinks she's easy to deal with because she's got a crush on him. She's just angry right now, Diane, you said. Once Liam softens her up, Sophie White will fall right back in line and go with him to the base. Rachel Shen still sounded uneasy. I'm just afraid Sophie won't be that easy to win over. After all, she's the one who's officially on the military spouse list. Yeah, Diane agreed. I think so too. Sophie's tough to handle, but Liam says he has a plan. He said he's going to sleep with her, Diane lowered her voice, and get her pregnant. Once she's carrying his child, she'll cave. Sophie would do anything for that kid. Rachel panicked. She can't get pregnant. If she has his child, then I'll never have a chance with Liam again. That's what I'm saying, Diane replied darkly. We absolutely can't let that cursed jinx have Liam's child. That's why I secretly bought this. Diane's voice dropped even lower. Tonight, I'll distract Sophie. You'll have your chance with Liam. The incense is in my room. Light it when the time comes. And don't forget to use the miracle oil before you go in. Tonight is your last chance. Hearing this, a cold smile slowly spread across my face. I turned and silently walked away. At 6 p.m., Liam, Diane, and Rachel finally returned home. The kitchen was cold and untouched. Diane started yelling the second she stepped through the door. Sophie White, who do you think you are, some rich man's wife? We get home this early and there's no dinner. What were you doing all day? I glanced at her. I did cook. It's just all gone now. You cursed wretch, how can you eat so much? Diane stormed over and lifted the clay pot lid to check. When she saw it was empty, she nearly burst with rage. Where the hell did all the eggs and brown sugar go? Don't tell me you ate it all yourself. I nodded. Yeah, I ate all of it. That wasn't true, of course. I had sold the red sugar and eggs. After all, I was the one who earned them with my hard work. In fact, I hadn't just sold the brown sugar eggs. I had sold the family's chickens, ducks, geese, and pigs too. It was just too late in the day for them to notice anything missing. Their minds were on other things. Diane kept cursing while her stomach growled from hunger. Rachel finally offered, I'll cook. But Liam, face tight with tension, shook his head. No need, I'll do it. He started preparing dinner himself, while Rachel followed along, playing the helpful assistant. Diane, meanwhile, hovered nearby, watching them like a doting matchmaker, throwing in cheerful comments and encouraging the two to bond. I watched the three of them from the corner of my eye, the warmth in their smiles nauseating. Then I turned and slipped quietly into Rachel's room. Her crossbody purse was sitting on the cabinet beside the bed. I opened it quickly. Inside, I found a bottle labeled Miracle Oil. So this was the little trick Diane had prepared for her darling Rachel and Liam. I chuckled under my breath, peeled off the label, and emptied the bottle's contents. Then I filled it with glue I had prepared beforehand. When I finished, I carefully placed it back where I found it and quietly returned to my room. Later, after dinner was finally done, Liam and Rachel came to my door. For once, They actually knocked and asked me to join them for the meal. I'd already eaten my fill, so I simply replied that I didn't feel well and needed to rest. Liam pretended to care, lingering at the door to ask a few questions, but Diane quickly called him away. The house fell quiet again. I lay in bed, calmly waiting. Sometime later, Liam returned and knocked on my door again. "Sophie, open up. I'm coming in to sleep." I ignored him, covering my ears and pretending to sleep. After knocking a few more times, Diane showed up and pulled him away. "Go sleep in my room tonight. I'll stay with your sister-in-law." "But Mom, I'd rather share a room with Sophie in case Rachel starts sleepwalking again." "Oh, come on. That was just a mistake last night. I'll keep an eye on her tonight. Nothing like that will happen again. Besides, that shameless girl isn't letting you in." "What are you going to do? Just stand here all night like a fool? Stop spoiling her. Just listen to your mother and go." Eventually, Diane led Liam away. Their footsteps faded down the hall. I lay in bed with a cold, satisfied smile, quietly waiting for what came next. Time ticked by. I grew drowsy, my eyelids heavy, and eventually I slipped into sleep. Suddenly, a piercing scream of pain shattered the silence. I jolted awake, eyes wide open. The cries were unmistakable, coming clearly from Diane Yu's room. I tilted my head, listening closely. It wasn't just one voice. There were two. Along with Liam's howls, I also heard Rachel's. The glue worked. I rolled out of bed and jumped to my feet. Just as I opened my door, Diane burst out of hers too. She had clearly heard what was happening. She knew exactly what Liam and Rachel were up to, and was afraid I'd ruin it. She rushed to block my way. "Sophie White, where are you going?" I looked at her with a mocking smile. I heard Liam shouting. Sounded like Rachel too. I thought I'd check it out. "You heard wrong," Diane snapped, trying to push me back toward my room. "Go back to bed. Now." She tried to shove me inside, but the screams from Liam and Rachel kept coming. Loud, raw, one after another. I braced my arm against the doorframe and refused to go back in. Not only did I refuse, I raised my voice and started shouting, "Help! Someone's being murdered! There's blood!" Diane hadn't expected that. My voice was loud and full of force, 10 times louder than Liam and Rachel's cries. Startled, she barked, "Sophie White! Are you crazy?" She lunged at me, trying to cover my mouth. Of course I didn't let her. I shoved her hard. She cried out and fell flat to the floor. The push had been strong, and now that there was no one around to perform for, Diane couldn't even fake being okay. Still, she tried. "Sophie White, my leg. I think I broke it, you heartless wretch. Come help me." I looked down at her coldly. "Hold tight, Mom. I'll get your son to carry you, straight to the ER." Then I took off running and raised my voice even louder. "Somebody, my mother-in-law fell and broke her leg. Please, someone help." My earlier shouting had already woken the neighbors. Now, hearing me call for help, they started getting up and heading over, one after another. Diane was furious, beyond furious. She only wanted to help Rachel and Liam have their little romantic disaster. Of course, she didn't want them to be discovered like this. She scrambled to her feet, trying to block the neighbors from coming in. But I couldn't let her spoil my plan now. I stepped on her hand with my full weight and ground it down. Diane let out a blood-curdling scream. I raised my voice again. "Hurry, everyone, come quick. My sister-in-law Rachel looks hurt too." Inside the room, Liam and Rachel heard the growing commotion outside. They tried to quiet down, realizing what was happening. But pain isn't something you can just silence. They were only human, not gods, and the pain was too much to bear. Their screams slipped out again, involuntarily. Hearing the strange noises from the room, the neighbors didn't hesitate. They pushed open the door to see what was going on. And just like that, Liam and Rachel were caught, completely exposed. What in the world? How can they be this shameless? The first neighbor gasped in horror. Another peered in, recoiled and spat. Disgusting. Absolute trash. "Cover my eyes," someone else muttered as they looked away, shocked. One by one, the neighbors crowded in, heads poking through the door, each one letting out a string of shocked gasps and muttered curses. Unbelievable. First time seeing something like this. Filthy. Rotten to the core. The sounds of spitting filled the air. Liam and Rachel had lost all dignity. But at this point, it wasn't even about shame anymore. They physically couldn't separate themselves. In agony, Liam moaned and finally begged for someone to help. "Please, take us to the hospital." That's when Diane realized just how badly things had gone off the rails. She forgot all about her leg or hand pain and, thick-skinned as ever, started begging the neighbors for help. And so, with nothing but bed sheets to cover themselves, Liam and Rachel were carried off, humiliated, broken, and exposed. Liam and Rachel were carried off by the neighbors, wrapped in bed sheets. I followed behind, sobbing loudly, shouting out everything they had done to me. Along the way, we passed through 3 villages. Word spread fast, and people from each village came out to watch the spectacle. There was no shortage of chatter. Isn't that Liam Xander from the Xander family? And that's the widow, Rachel Shen. Sure is, and look, his wife Sophie White is right there, crying behind them. These two are shameless. Not only were they caught in the act, they couldn't even be separated. I've never heard of such a thing in my life. Disgusting. No sense of decency. I always knew something was going on between those two. Back when they were in school, they already acted way too close. Everyone used to say something was off between them. When Liam's older brother died, I thought Rachel would eventually remarry, but she stayed in the Xander house, doing nothing all day. I said back then it wasn't normal, but people told me I was the one with the dirty mind. Who's wrong now? I heard Liam gave his entire salary to Rachel, and not a single penny to Sophie. Poor girl had to chop firewood and dig up herbs just to survive. And while she worked herself to the bone, Rachel and Diane sat around doing nothing, not even cooking. They used Sophie like a servant. I thought those two would be sneaky about their affair. Turns out they did it right under Sophie's nose. How cruel. Overwhelmed with emotion, I raised my voice even more and wailed, "What did I do to deserve this? Haven't I worked hard enough? Haven't I been obedient enough? You treated me like a beast of burden and plotted behind my back like this. No wonder you always brought gifts home for Rachel. No wonder you insisted on taking her to the base instead of me. You've been sneaking around all along." Liam and Rachel became infamous on the way to the hospital. By the time we got there, the crowd behind us had grown into a procession. I felt completely at peace. After this, I knew Liam and Rachel would be bound together for life. No way they could ever separate now. Once they arrived at the hospital, both of them were rushed into surgery. The doctors were baffled. None of them had seen anything like it. After a long discussion, they finally figured out a way to dissolve the glue and separate them. Hours later, Liam and Rachel fell into an exhausted sleep. As for me, I quietly returned to the Xander home, ransacked every cabinet, and gathered up all the valuable money and belongings in the house. Then, I called Liam's military unit. I filed a report accusing him of immoral conduct and serious disciplinary violations. I described his behavior in detail: unfit for a soldier, disgraceful, and appalling. Now all I had to do was wait for the military to investigate and deliver his punishment. That night, Liam had a dream. In it, he saw himself taking Rachel to the base. He dreamed of making solemn promises to me, swearing he'd come back and bring me to enjoy a good life. But everything changed 3 months in. Rachel sleepwalked into his room and got into his bed. He didn't push her away, and one thing led to another. He felt ashamed, guilty, and conflicted. But Rachel was calm. She told him she didn't blame him. She even said she was willing to stay with him for the rest of her life, never remarrying. Liam was moved. Deep down, he was terrified Rachel would make a scene. He knew that if the affair came to light, it would ruin him. He'd be discharged. He'd lose everything. He had worked so hard to get where he was. He couldn't afford to throw it all away. Rachel's understanding attitude made him feel even more grateful. And so they kept living under the same roof. Tacitly, quietly. But things like that don't just happen once. Soon, it happened again. The second time, the guilt was gone. The fear faded. He even began to enjoy it. Eventually, people in the military housing compound started referring to Rachel as his wife. Liam wanted to deny it, but didn't know how. After all, they were already living like a married couple. He felt guilty about me, about Sophie White. He knew I loved him. He couldn't imagine what I would think if I ever found out about Rachel, so he never told me. Year after year, he kept making excuses to delay things. Out of guilt, he asked Rachel to send a large part of his salary back home for me to use. He prayed Sophie White would never find out about what had happened between him and Rachel Shen. Maybe fate had been on his side all along. His mother, Diane, had always been in poor health, and Sophie had stayed home all these years to care for her, dutifully fulfilling the role of a good daughter-in-law. She had never suspected a thing. She just kept tending to Diane quietly, foolishly loyal and devoted. Years passed, one after another. Liam had gotten used to a life where Sophie stayed back home while Rachel was by his side. Then, by coincidence, the military assigned new housing, and to qualify, one needed a marriage certificate. He and Sophie had never officially registered their marriage, and Rachel had long been known as his wife within the base's family quarters. For the sake of securing the housing, Liam and Rachel went to register their marriage. He told himself he'd divorce her later. He knew he couldn't let things continue this way, but somehow, one delay led to another, and before he knew it, years had passed. Maybe life had gotten too easy. Over time, his guilt toward Sophie wore down. He convinced himself Sophie might never learn the truth, and if she did, he'd make it up to her. With that thought, he gradually began to take everything for granted. He and Rachel became the perfect couple in everyone's eyes. Colleagues, neighbors, even friends saw them as devoted husband and wife. Then, suddenly, Sophie showed up. She shattered the quiet life Liam had built. She had come because Diane's illness had worsened and there was no money for treatment. Sophie said she'd written to the military base many times, made countless phone calls, but no one ever responded. In the end, she had no choice but to come find him in person. When she arrived, she caught him and Rachel walking hand in hand on the base grounds. Her hair had grayed. Her face was lined with hardship. She wore threadbare clothes and carried a canvas bag in her hand. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at their joined hands. Liam instinctively let go of Rachel's hand and hurried toward Sophie. He was terrified, afraid she'd scream, make a scene, and expose everything. Frantic, he dragged Sophie into the home he shared with Rachel and locked the door behind them. Then, right there, he confessed everything. His relationship with Rachel, the lies, the betrayal. He even knelt down, begging Sophie for forgiveness. Tears streamed down Sophie's face. She wouldn't forgive him. She couldn't accept the betrayal. She had given the best years of her life to him, believing she was his support, his strength. She had believed her sacrifices were honorable, that one day all the pain and toil would be worth it. Never once did she imagine the man she trusted most would betray her like this. Looking at her weathered face, the calluses on her hands, the faded clothes on her back, Liam broke down. He turned to Rachel, demanding, "Didn't you send her the money like I told you?" Sophie said she'd never received a single cent. Rachel had no choice but to admit it. She had kept all the money for herself. In a rage, Liam slapped her across the face. Rachel dropped to her knees, sobbing, begging for forgiveness, pleading with Sophie to let them be together. She promised to give all the money to Sophie to make up for it. But Sophie refused. She was shaking all over. Her entire body trembled with fury. She shouted that she would report them both to the military authorities. Liam had risen to a high rank. He couldn't let her do that. Without thinking, he grabbed her, trying to stop her. He begged, pleaded, offered to make it right, but Sophie wouldn't hear it. She insisted on exposing everything. In a moment of panic, Rachel shoved Sophie hard. Liam watched in horror as Sophie fell heavily to the floor, her head striking the corner of the table. Blood flowed out instantly. He hesitated for a second, then reached out to help her. But before he could touch her, Rachel lifted one of Liam's dumbbells and smashed it down on Sophie's head. With a sickening thud, blood splattered like an exploding rose. Liam let out a scream of pure agony, and then he woke up, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. He stared around in confusion, disoriented. His eyes met Diane's from across the room. She looked haggard, worn down by time, her eye sockets bruised and swollen. As soon as Liam opened his eyes, Diane grabbed his hand tightly and said, "Liam, you're awake." "Where's Sophie?" Liam asked immediately. "Where is Sophie White?" "Don't even mention that wretched woman," Diane snapped, full of resentment. "You were in the hospital and she never showed her face once. She's out there ruining your reputation, slandering you and Rachel everywhere. I wish I could beat her to death. Oh, and that heartless woman, she took all the money in the house, sold the chickens, ducks, geese, and even the pig. She even sold off the furniture. The whole house is empty now." Diane ranted, her face twisted in anger. Still, she looked over at Liam with concern. But Liam, are you feeling all right? Still caught in the emotional aftermath of his nightmare, Liam slowly began to process her words. As Diane hurled her curses at Sophie, something clicked in his mind. He suddenly remembered why he was in the hospital in the first place. His face turned pale. Shaking, he pulled his hand from Diane's grip and asked her word by word, "Why did this happen? What exactly happened between Rachel and me?" Diane avoided his eyes. She looked away and tried to change the subject. "It's already come to this. Just live well with Rachel now. I can take care of myself. Once you recover, take her with you when you return to base." She still held on to the illusion that this whole incident had only reached the village and hadn't yet spread to the military. As long as they kept it quiet, her son wouldn't face consequences. If they could just make it through this storm, things would go back to normal. But Liam shoved her aside and staggered out of the hospital, making his way home. When he arrived, the house was exactly as Diane described. Completely bare, not a single valuable left. Sophie was nowhere to be found. He looked everywhere for her, asked everyone he could, but no one knew where she had gone. Even the neighbors and villagers, some from the next village over, pointed fingers and whispered as he walked by. Liam felt the weight of shame pressing down on him. He knew his reputation in the village was ruined beyond repair. Still, he clung to one final shred of hope. Just like Diane, he prayed that the military hadn't found out yet. If he could keep it under wraps, maybe he still had a chance to climb back up. That last hope crumbled the moment he saw the uniformed investigators from the army approaching. The case had caused a major scandal. It was vile and had far-reaching implications. The investigators barely had to try. Everyone was eager to spill the truth. There was nothing Liam could say to defend himself. He was discharged from the military in disgrace. Stripped of everything, he returned to the countryside. His home was empty. He had nothing. He had to start from scratch. For a man who once held power and lived comfortably, it was torture. The physical labor wore him down. But what wore him out even more were the two women in the house, his mother, Diane, and Rachel. Before his dismissal, Diane and Rachel were like mother and daughter. Their bond had seemed unbreakable, and Liam had assumed it would last. But it didn't even take a few months for their true natures to surface. With no money and no one left to boss around, life became unbearable. Diane refused to do any work. Rachel, who'd long grown used to a life of leisure, wouldn't stoop to doing hard labor either. The two of them constantly argued over the smallest things. Shouting matches became common. They even got physical. Neither of them pretended anymore. They hurled insults, spat venom. It was ugly. Eventually, Rachel no longer wanted to stay in the house. She looked down on Liam, saw him as useless, incapable of earning a living. Just like back then when she chose Liam's older brother because he had a stable job and could provide her with good food and nice clothes, she now began looking for another man who could offer her more. She abandoned Liam without hesitation, just like before. Diane never saw it coming. Enraged, she tried to stop Rachel from leaving, but Rachel didn't care. They got into a physical fight, screaming, cursing, dragging each other through the mud. That was when Liam finally saw it clearly. Rachel had never truly loved him. She had manipulated Diane, constantly badmouthed Sophie to her, plotted and schemed alongside her, all to take Sophie's place once Liam got promoted. Rachel had only ever wanted his power. And now that he had nothing, there was nothing left for her to love. She needed to get out, and fast. Liam was furious. He blamed everything that had happened, his downfall, his disgraceful discharge, entirely on Rachel. In his mind, she had plotted against him from the very beginning. She was unfaithful, manipulative, and cunning. He believed she'd deliberately used him, ensnaring him in her trap and turning his life into a complete disaster. Rachel tried to explain, saying it was Diane who gave her the wrong drug that night, but Liam refused to believe a word of it. Now, Liam was no longer the man he once was. To be exact, he was no longer physically functional, broken in ways that could never be repaired. And he believed it was all because of Rachel. He swore he would never let her go. Since Rachel was so fond of staying in the Carter household, then she could stay. Forever. Liam forced her to marry him. He cornered her when she tried to run away, and they got a marriage certificate. They were officially husband and wife now. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. They had no children. Liam had turned to alcohol. Every time he got drunk, he beat Rachel without restraint. He unleashed his hatred on her, and her body was covered in bruises and scars. She couldn't leave. Not legally. She was his wife now, bound to him by law. And Liam had threatened her coldly more than once. If she dared try to escape, he'd kill her. Rachel lived in fear. She endured everything, forced to take on all the chores Sophie once did. Her life was filled with hard, soul-draining labor. Days passed in numb repetition. She had no time to think, no time to dream. Until one day, she saw a sleek car pulling into the village. People swarmed around it in excitement. She heard someone say Sophie's name. Rachel turned and saw her, Sophie, standing in the crowd, radiant and elegant. She wore a floral dress, heels, and her hair was curled in soft waves like a movie star. Sophie wasn't alone. She was with her husband and 2 adorable kids. I stood surrounded by the villagers, and my eyes landed on Rachel just outside the crowd. She was disheveled, her hair a tangled mess. Her face was pale and gaunt. Her clothes were faded and patched all over. She looked exactly like I did in my past life. Clearly, life hadn't treated her well. When our eyes met, she instinctively looked away and tried to retreat. But I stepped through the crowd, smiling, and stopped her. "Long time no see, Rachel." Rachel lowered her gaze in shame. She didn't dare look at me. Because I greeted her so openly, the crowd around us began whispering again. Old gossip resurfaced. The scandal between Rachel and Liam. Eyewitnesses vividly retold the story, their voices dripping with contempt. Pale-faced and panicked, Rachel tried to flee again. I stepped in front of her. "Seeing you like this brings me a lot of joy, you know?" I smiled, calm and sharp. "I only have 2 things to say to you. First, it was me who switched the miracle oil that Diane prepared for you and Liam that night. Second, I was the one who reported Liam to the military, the reason he got kicked out." Rachel's eyes burned with hatred as she stared at me. If looks could kill, I would have died a dozen times right there. Still smiling, I asked, "Do you like the gift I gave you too?" "Doesn't matter if you don't. You have to live with it. You and Liam, 2 pieces of trash bound together for life. That's what I've wanted most this second chance around." Rachel stumbled back to the house in a panic. She ran to find Liam. "Liam, I have something to tell you." "What?" Liam looked at her with pure disgust. That night, it was Sophie," she said anxiously. "She's the one who swapped the medicine your mom gave us. She wanted to ruin us. She told me herself it was her who reported you, who got you discharged." Rachel was desperate. She believed that everything she'd suffered for the past 10 years was all Sophie's fault. Seeing Sophie now, rich and glowing with happiness, was unbearable. How could Sophie become someone so successful? How could she afford a car, marry a handsome, wealthy man? Rachel had always thought she was better than Sophie. How did she end up shackled to a useless wreck like Liam? It was all Sophie's fault. Bookmark. Go back. She wanted Sophie to die without even a place to be buried. Rachel knew she could never take revenge on Sophie by herself, so she turned to Liam. After all, in her mind, the root of everything Liam had become, the disgrace, the shame, was Sophie. If she could just tell Liam the full truth, incite him, and get him to kill Sophie, then she'd be free. No more beatings, no more days slaving under the sun. She could finally walk away, find another man, maybe even someone powerful. She truly believed that once she escaped Liam, she'd have a better life. "Liam, we can't let Sophie get away with this. Let's kill that bitch," Rachel said venomously, watching him closely for a reaction. Liam's expression darkened. His face was ashen and tense, his eyes clouded with something deep and dangerous. He twitched at the corner of his mouth, and as Rachel had hoped, he slowly reached for an axe. A small smile crept onto Rachel's face. Sophie's good days were finally over, but in the very next second, Liam turned the axe and swung it straight at Rachel. The sound of bone cracking exploded in the air. Rachel watched in horror as one of her legs flew off, landing nearly 6 feet away. Blood sprayed in all directions. The pain was so intense her face twisted into a grotesque expression. She collapsed instantly, unable to stand. As she hit the ground, her voice trembled in shock. "Why?" Liam answered with another blow of the axe. Looking down at Rachel, writhing in a pool of her own blood, Liam snarled, "You vile bitch. You killed my brother. You ruined 2 lives, mine and Sophie's. And now you want to use me again to hurt her? You really think I'm that stupid, that I'd let you manipulate me again? You don't deserve to stay in this world. Go rot in hell. The ambulance and police arrived quickly. Rachel, her legs severed, was hoisted onto a stretcher and rushed into the ambulance. Liam, soaked in blood, was handcuffed and shoved into the back of a police car. As he stepped into the vehicle, he turned and looked back, right at me in the crowd. Then, suddenly, he shoved the officer aside and lunged in my direction. People screamed and scattered, but I stood perfectly still. Liam dropped to his knees before me with a heavy thud. The officer lowered his raised weapon. I looked down at Liam. His eyes were full of regret, his face ravaged with sorrow, and I slowly said,